So in the room, we have here two of the three authors of the book. Gerda Gemser is in Australia in an entirely different time zone. It would be middle of the night for her, so we couldn't have her in the session. But we do have Giulia and Erik. And these are people with a very solid track record in design leadership. Giulia, from an academic perspective, I had the pleasure to work with Giulia in many different roles at the TU Delft. And Giulia has been researching the role of design in fostering innovation and leadership for a very long time. Endless publications, very productive, very energetic, and always very, very full of good ideas. And the way I understand it, Giulia has been actually running the academic research that led to this book. And then on the other side of the table, we have Erik Quint. And Erik Quint is a very seasoned design leader from practice, both through his roles at Philips and at 3M. At 3M, he established the practice of design leadership, developed a whole new corporate identity, established a design leadership center, and has been crucial in lifting design, actually elevating design at scale at 3M. So his story is very much from practice. And I think what I really love about this book and this collaboration is that academic plus practice angle. And maybe that's where we start the conversation. And I'm going to ask this question to Erik. How did you get to join these two academic ladies, Giulia and Gerda, in their research? What was the story that led up to you becoming a co-author of this book?
Yeah, thanks first of all for the TU Delft to host this event, and it's a great way to share and have a dialogue on design leadership, which is close to my heart. Yeah, how it all started is. It's as many things in life, it's serendipity. So Giulia and Gerda were doing a research on design leadership, and we're planning actually to write a white paper about that. I was one of the design leaders interviewed for that research. And I remember after the first session we had, or after the session we had, I got the transcript of the session and I said, but there's so much more to design leadership. Maybe you were interested to have more sessions. And as we were talking, there was so much more that in the end we were thinking, okay, maybe there is not a white paper, there's much more in it, and maybe we can start to collaborate on writing a book. So that's how we came together, more or less.
Cool, cool. Did you have on your agenda somewhere to sort of switch your career from being a lot in practice to being more coach, author, speaker? Was that part of the plan?
My whole gig in America was planned for 5 years, just by myself. I wanted to do the job for 5 years, and it happened to be 7.5 years. So after that, the book was already in the make, and I decided to move back to the Netherlands after a pretty turmoil, say, period in the US. Particularly because of politics. I mean, the job was great and the company was great. So that was one of the things. The other thing is, you can say the book for me started 35 years ago. As a practitioner, you start to explore a lot of things and find your own way. Particularly if you think about 35 years ago, design management and design leadership was certainly not at the forefront as what we have now. And so I had to find out a lot of things by making mistakes also sometimes, and in the painful way. But and particularly lately in the last couple of years, when I was doing keynotes all around the world, people were asking me whether there was a book about my insights, and I never had the time to write a book. And so when this opportunity came along, I was happy to jump on it, because I was also at a stage in my career that you love to give back, you know, and to mentor and coach people to become just better leaders, and hopefully they can learn the tricks faster than I have done and become better. And so that's how things came together.
It's the kind of book you wish you had when you were younger, right?
Yes, I hope so. For sure, it would have helped me a lot, I think.
Yeah, that's great. Giulia, how was that for you? How did you move from your academic research to writing a book like this, which is of course, rooted in academia, but partly also for a larger audience. How is this in your story?
Yeah, as an academic, I've always been very interested in making sure that the research that I do is not only for the academics, but also for relevant for a broader audience, practitioners, students, business people. So and Herda as well. So we have already booked together, and so we really felt that when Erik expressed additional interest in our work, that this was another opportunity for us to make something that can be really relevant and easy to read and applicable for a larger audience, which is our way of living the academic life and career. Mm-hmm. And for us, it's also it's great to work with Erik, because I think one of the things that he really added to our work is to use the right language and name the things in a way that could be understandable and that modern, contemporary to people that are really dealing with their challenges. So we jumped on the opportunity as well with a lot of enthusiasm.
That's great. That's great. So in our preparatory talks, we talked a little bit about why this book now, huh? And you mentioned that there's these huge topics, and of course we cannot not mention Ukraine right now, and let's not go into it, but it feels like there's so many things shifting in the world and moving in the world, and we discussed this notion of design stepping up. And Erik, can you talk a little bit about why now and how you feel that these big transformations in the world and these big shifts have caused you to also maybe take your own responsibility more seriously as a designer?
Yeah. So what is important, I think, is that if you look to the challenges that we have all together in the world, they are getting more and more complex. They are all from a systemic order. And you need to start to elevate design much more to a strategic level in order to contribute to these kind of challenges. And if design wants to still have a position into the future, I think better designers step up to all of this. It comes with a great responsibility, but also with great opportunities. And in terms of, if you ask designers what they want most, I think what they want most is creating impact to society. Yeah. And yes, how do they do it? And that's the next big thing, is by creating value for the companies they work for, because the companies they work for are actually is a platform to amplify what you can do as a designer. And so if I think about these challenges, then there are a few things that designers do and can bring to the table that are not done by anybody else. And I think I would say it is creativity first, but designers are not the sole owners of creativity, of course. But imagination is a huge thing as well. And so you can never work and explore the biggest challenge in the world if there is no imagination around the table to create scenarios of probable futures that you explore and then discuss with main stakeholders to bring it to life. Yeah. So the book Why Now is for me, it's the right time to give back and to share all my knowledge. But in the state of mind and art where we are in the world, there is so much opportunity for designers to play that I would love to share my insights with, say, upcoming design leaders or even seasoned design leaders, to support them in sharing the frameworks and the thinking to become better leaders and better designers. So
that's great. That's
can
great.
Can I add something?
Yeah, please. Yeah.
There's also another interesting. Erik said the designers bring a lot of interesting things to the table. It's also their ability to collaborate and their willingness to collaborate, which is so important today, really given the times. And I think our book, and Erik is a great ambassador of that, is also a book about collaboration. So the design leadership that we describe And the power of these design leaders is in their ability of starting, in their stubbornness in starting and continuing this collaboration through all sort of challenges.
Yeah, and that touches on a topic that I want to discuss with you, which is these core qualities of design, namely imagination. You mentioned, Erik, you mentioned collaboration. These also seem exactly the kind of qualities that are a bit harder to manage and scale, because they are more human, they're a bit less predictable, they don't fit the quarterly reporting structures of large corporations, right? And my question around that is, Erik, how have you dealt with that in your career, and how do you feel that design leadership and the book you've written can help future leaders to bring these things into the boardroom, these more human soft qualities?
The theme for today is about design leadership and transformation. And I think you can only be a transformational leader if you are sensitive and empathetic, but also bold and directive sometimes. And I see in big companies, innovation is failing a lot because there's a lot of fear about failure. And so failure is paralyzing the innovation engine in many cases. And I'm not talking even about enabling conditions that are in many cases are not available to do breakthrough innovation. But if you keep it simple to what you can do as professionals in an organization. So yeah, in order to drive transformation, you need to step up your game, and you cannot be in the sideline waiting until somebody is asking you to do a job. You need to take action. You need to be proactive, and sometimes you do things that might not be, in first instance, respected. And so, if you think about integration of design in a big organization, and particularly I'm talking about a tech environment, then I would say adding design to an organization is an inclusion challenge across all levels. And why is that? That is because of the story of the left and the right brain, and the qualitative and the quantitative. You know, many people in business are trained in a particular way, and they love to talk through numbers and Excel sheets, and that's not the way designers talk. And so the worst thing you can do as a designer is start to copy that behavior in order to feel that you belong to the boys' network, yeah, or the women's network. But I think what designers need to do foremost is understand that designers are different. That if companies talk so much about inclusion, in my opinion, I'm talking about not inclusion in appearance, but inclusion in thought. Then what designers bring in is inclusion and differentiation in thought. Yeah. And so that's what I do. You need to put the mirror in front of your business people and say, hey, you talk all the time about inclusion and diversity. And here there is a design team that is diverse. They think differently, and you force us to think in numbers. I can give you a great example, which is pretty inspiring, I think. When I had the chief design brand officer's role in 3M, I was growing the team rapidly from 20 to, in the end, 200 people. So I needed to have a design studio, and that comes with a huge investment. So I was talking from the first couple of months about that design studio because I knew it would take a year, 2 years to build. And I asked to my peers, executives, what do I need to do to get the funding for a design center up and running? And they all told me, well, you have to make a business plan and then a return on investment and all of that business talk. And I gave it half a day, and I decided not to do that and not make a business plan, because I'm not good at making business plans. And why would I do it? This is not my language. And so I agreed with the board of directors not to do any business plans. I went into that boardroom with literally 3 sheets. One sheet was to show how design fits the strategy of the company. That was a very simple visualization. The second one was, of course, the investment that I needed and a visualization of the design center, so how I envisioned it. And that was pretty inspiring because it was completely different. And the third one, before I left the meeting, I left a fake New York Times article in the room where I was giving an interview to myself about the vision and strategy of design, of how I saw the added value of design to the company. And by that, I got a multi-million investment for a design center. And so again, here, you need to build on your strength and not try to build on what you're not. So this is a bit of a story.
That's great. So Giulia, you did a lot of research for this book and you talked to a lot of design leaders. And I wonder, when you hear Erik talk this anecdote, which is very inspiring, and there's a certain level of fearlessness in this approach, and sticking to your principles and building on your strength. And you have this term called fearless design leadership in your book. I'm curious, did this theme emerge a lot from the conversations you had with design leaders?
Yeah. So that is something that really is common to many of the accomplished and experienced design leaders. We also, there are a couple of things that you can add there. We also have this idea of scaling design is not a sprint, but it's a marathon, which means that it's going to cost you a lot of back and forth, a lot of doors in your face, but you'll have to keep going, to have a concrete plan on how to do that. So we saw this idea of resilience and being fearless coming back a lot. And we also noticed the entrepreneurial mindset of some of the designers, or many of the designers that we interviewed, which connects well with the idea of fearless. So being entrepreneurial means that you are in the process of scaling design. The design leader is the one that finds concrete opportunities, concrete projects that will help him or her or he or she in growing this impact. So we have a lot of examples of designers really thinking about a variety of stakeholders, and I try to identify which stakeholder is the one at the moment that is closer to them, and going with an entrepreneurial mindset, with a fearless mindset at the door of that particular entrepreneur, of that particular stakeholder, to see what kind of problems could be addressed through design. So it is really a recurring feature of many designers.
Well, there is another element to the fearlessness, and that is opportunism. So you need to be an opportunist as well, just to jump on your opportunities. Actually, the big secret was of my say tenure at 3M and the progress that we made is I approached my challenge as a chief design officer that I got from the board of directors as a design project. Mm-hmm. So I made a design project out of it in terms of understanding what the context was, finding out who were my key stakeholders, finding opportunities. And what we learned from the research, which was an eye-opener for me, is that of the almost 60 people that we interviewed, or that Giulia and Gabby interviewed, we saw a lot of passion, a lot of commitment, and a lot of vision also in terms of what they wanted to achieve. But there was a disconnect with the reality going on. So a lot of frustration was also ventilated in the interviews by lack of progress or lack of understanding. And the main reason for that, in my opinion, is that in many cases, there was a lack of vision definition and strategy and mission and road mapping that would bring the design leaders with their ideas of how it could look like from the now to the future. And this is so extremely important. If you don't have a few basic, say, documents and thinkings defined as well communicated amongst your peers, you are becoming a hero in your dark corner, but there is nobody that is joining the party. And so that is where there was a bit of a disconnect. And so we write about it in the book as well.
There's some it's interesting in the comments. There's some good reflections on fearlessness and acting on your strength and sticking to your core. And it's actually quite, it triggers, I think, quite some imagination with people, because it's a vision on leadership that is not trying to melt in with the existing paradigms and existing metric frameworks or what have you, but really stand and hold your ground.
Well, it depends. If you want to become a servant, and yeah, you have a choice.
Yeah.
And I think designers have to learn to say no. And so the way I look at about fearless, the way I have defined it in the book also, is using a disagreement as a great source to drive progress.
Mm-hmm.
So think about that, using disagreements to drive progress as a source for progress. That means that you have options. You can be busy forever in the tactical design world, but you can also say at a certain moment in time, no, I want to position my team to become more strategic and create maybe a bit more value and be more relevant. And so, but you need to have the fearlessness to go into it and just make a position. And I think that is what design leadership is about. You do it on behalf of your team.
Yeah.
So you create the right enabling conditions and the right oxygen for your team to flourish and to drive and develop in the right way that creates the best value. Yeah. And so if you are a servant, that means what very often happens if you are a consultant, you're asked to do something, you bring all your intelligence on board, and hopefully you add a lot of value. But the ownership is always, there's a risk that ownership is missing. And so here you need to take that ownership to drive.
Yeah. There's actually an interesting question from Brian in the chat. Hi, Brian. Good to have you here. Brian Gillespie from the US. Talking about how design leadership has many different forms depending on the context, depending on whether you're leading a team or a discipline or a practice. And well, we talked in our preparations on the different stages of design maturity. Giulia, can you talk a little bit about the different forms and shapes of design leadership, and what is sort of the common denominator, and what are on top of that common denominator different sort of differentiations and variations in design leadership? If that makes sense.
Yeah, so in the book, and looking at how design leaders operate, we have actually defined and explained design leadership as an adaptive type of leadership with a set of features that actually seems contradictory at the first glance, but that needs to be used together. And some of these dualities are more important than others, depending on the particular context of the organization. I'll give a couple of examples that already somehow popped up in the previous conversation. A design leader is a person that brings novelty, new ideas to a company, so needs to be transformative, needs to bring a different vision of where the company should go and how to get there. At the same time, this design, he or she, they operate within an organization, so they need to take the strengths and the limitation of the organization into account in their work. So they have to be affirmative. They have to adapt and be affirmative of the strengths that are already there. So these are, for instance, two characteristics that can be that are contradictory but needs to be balanced, and probably.
Can you repeat the two? Affirmative, and the other one was
transformative versus affirmative.
Okay.
That would be an example of it. And another one mentioned before as well is the design leader needs to be intuitive, so be able to let his ideas drive their activities. At the same time, a design leader needs to be systematic in his leadership, so create strong, well-structured argument grounded in concrete things that are happening around them. And it's yeah, here we go. That's the range of dualities that we have identified. Let's say dualities in the behavior of design leaders. And what also emerged is that some behaviors are more appropriate, for instance, when you operate in companies that have low design maturity. So if you operate in a company that uses design as a service, that is new to design, that is still using design only for translated ideas into real products, then perhaps a more transformative type of leadership is what you need to emphasize. Once you are in the stage of growing the impact of design, so making design really a strategic partner at all levels of the organization, then you need to be very careful to what the organization needs, to the goals of the organization, and adapt your work to that. So
on Brian's question also, it is that along the roadmap and the journey to build and scale design in an organization, you need probably a couple of different types of design leaders and the design leader characteristics to get you going. When I started in 3M, that was a new venture, more or less. So you have a complete different skill set and interest probably as well than if you are a mature design team that is delivering at scale already, where there is maybe more need for driving quality. Well, in the beginning, you're not even thinking about quality yet. You just need to get going. It's just a little spark, and you need to get design going in the organization. So that's really a new venture. Where you have other qualities. It's a bit similar to business leadership skills. Starting a new company, you need other skills than if you need to do a big reorganization or you need to scale or drive partnerships.
So what I really like about that view is that it sort of steps away from the road towards design leadership is just more leadership and more design. You're saying it's highly contextual, and there's different types of leadership and different types of design and different types of contexts of organization, which brings me to another model that I'd like some voiceover on, which is this one, where we discussed this, Erik, and you also clearly indicated your style of leadership and how that fitted a certain level of maturity in a sort of a stage in the journey. Can you elaborate on that a little bit more?
Yeah, so when I said in the introduction that after 5 years, I stayed another couple of years and then I decided to go back. One of the reasons was also that I'm typically interested by driving progress in a new venture. So the whole establishing the foundation, which is the first thing that you need to do if you start a new design function in a company, is particularly what is my interest. It's almost it's a bit masochistic as well, to be honest, because it is you swim against the stream all the time, and you have to build your cases, and you have to make small steps. But then I expected and said to the team, if I'm able with the team to build that foundation when I leave, and it is strong enough to further grow, then I think we did a great job. And the other thing I mentioned is you should not evaluate my contribution to the company when I leave, but in 5 years from now, because if the team is still flourishing and even has further grown, then the foundation was solid enough to build that host for design and creativity in the company. But you have 3 phases that we describe in the book. All supported by, in the left top corner, design leadership, because that's what the main topic is, but it is establishing the foundation. You need to do a few things there. Then you need to empower the design team and grow the design team and build the talent and the competences so that you can distribute your talent in the right way across the company. And then you go into the last phase, which is elevating to design excellence, where you are scaling on a qualitative and quantitative level, and you build for design excellence. Well, this process can easily take 10 years in a company. And I'm talking about a big enterprise here, say 100,000 people in 70 countries and having multiple lines of businesses.
If you look at the leadership qualities in these 3 stages, how would they change, or what kind of different qualities would you need to?
Well, very rough. In the beginning, you're a pioneer. And you're much more into a sales job, to be honest, because and a bridge builder, because you need to start to connect in the company and share your stories. And sometimes the stories are very small, but you are able to tell those stories in a very inspiring way. I remember when I got the money for the design center, and then a year later the design center was there. Somebody told me and said, well, congratulations to you and your team. You know what the most remarkable thing was, is that when you talked after 3 months in the company about the design center, you talked about it as if it was there. And I think that was the way I got it going. Mm-hmm. And so that kind of qualities is different from when you are at the design excellence level, where you are, you need to deal with academia, you are doing more research-based things, you're working on the quality of the design solutions that you deliver. You are writing more white papers, maybe. Well, it's get on another level of depth.
Yeah.
And so you need another kind of maybe more academic research type of leader. Yeah. And so you see that there's different ways to all of this.
Yeah.
And don't forget, through all of this, you need to be able to build culture. So in the second phase, you need to be much more focusing on building bridges and culture building within the team as well. So that you build, because if you scale and your basics are not right, you scale for trouble. So you need to make sure that you do the right things at the foundation to make sure that if you scale, and I'm talking here about a couple of hundred people, that you are in a smooth running team based on one mindset and one culture.
Cool. Yes, that's great, Erik, and very relevant. I'm curious, Giulia, in your when you did your research, did you also encounter design leaders way up there in the elevating to design excellence, or is that still quite rare in organizations? Have we reached that level of maturity, or is it still are we still pioneering in general?
I think most of the design leaders are still struggling. So the path to design excellence is a long and tough one. So I would say most of the design, if not all the design leaders that we have encountered are not done with their job. But that is also part of the game, I think. So design excellence is a moving target. So mm-hmm. it's something that really changes as the organization changes. So we define design excellence as really contextual, something that depends on many things, but also depends on the goals that the organization has. And an organization can change goals from one day to the other. So from 1 year to the other, what design excellence is and all the efforts of a design leader are meaningless, and they need to do a couple of steps back and start again. Yeah. So I would say this is a long journey, and it's a never-ending journey. Yeah. And I don't.
Well, that's for sure. It's a never-ending journey, and it is also a journey that you might once reach design excellence. And I have an example. I think in Philips design, we had a great excellence practice going on. But then the changes in the businesses and the divestments that were going on have an impact on all of that, and then you suddenly go back a couple of steps. So it is a continuous challenge to be on top of the ball. I saw a question from Brian flipping by asking on my background. And so my background is a bit of a combined thing, but I did indeed industrial design on the academy in Eindhoven, but also I did engineering and industrial engineering. Great. And so the combination of both, that's what I've done. It's about designing organizations, in fact, if you are a design leader in many cases.
Yeah. Can I go to a question by Chiara, which is a very good one, which I'm also struggling with, and we talked about a little bit in the preparation. How is design leadership different from leadership in general? What makes it worthwhile to write a book on design leadership, seeing that there are already a lot of books on leadership and on business management and those kind of things? I believe that there's part of the answer is in the dualities we discussed, but I'd like to hear a little bit more of your findings, Giulia.
Yeah, a lot is in that. It's also in the scope of what design leaders do. So we define design leadership and the way in which design leaders divide their efforts in. So on one side, they have to reach functional excellence. So they have to make sure that they are excellent, that their team delivers great design. So they have to keep the motivation and the level of competence of their team on point and to the utmost best level. At the same time, design leadership is also about creating space for design within an organization. So the scope is not just making sure that the design function reach its own excellence, but it's also negotiating continuously a role for design within the organization. So that requires a bunch of additional skills that go beyond imagination, which goes into what we said about being fearless, about being a good communicator with a variety of stakeholders, being empathetic towards all the stakeholders. So using this, another great characteristic of design leaders is their, let's say, I call it strategic empathy. So they use their empathy not just for the users, not just for the consumers, but for any any person that they interact with, which means all the stakeholders. And that's a quality that designers naturally have a little bit more. They have practiced that better than other leaders.
And would you agree that because that's also what Chiara is, I hope I pronounce your name right, Chiara. Chiara is also hinting at that other leaders also seem to embrace these qualities, and they are not exclusive to design. And what I find interesting is that it seems that the qualities that design is sort of used to bring to the table, collaboration, imagination, empathy, creativity, are actually qualities that are being embraced more and more by leadership in general. Is that me, the optimist, speaking, or did you also see that at 3M, Erik? That there was
I talked a lot about creative leadership, because if you think about the two aspects of leadership. One is, your skill set as a human being, as a leader, which is about your communication skills, your soft skills, your communication skills, your empathy, your ability to do collaborations, and so on and so on. The other side is the hard skills. Are you able to run a business? Do you know about a balance sheet? That is the business side of things. Now, if you think about the soft skills, there are a lot of similarities. But if you think about how to apply this in practice, then on the hard skills and on the connection to managing a creative team is completely different than managing a team of engineers. Yeah. And so there's a lot of books about that as well, that the management of creatives is of a different nature. And in the book, but also in we tackle the question about, doesn't a design leader need to be with a creative and a design background, or can it be an engineer? Well, we have seen so many bad examples, and only maybe a few good examples, where design teams reported into marketing or branding or innovation or engineering or science, R&D, where things could go completely wrong. And that's why is that? How can a non-designer create a flourishing creative culture? Those people don't even speak the language of designers. And so I always say with a lot of pride, designers are different, but they're not special. Let's forget about that. I think there's still too many designers that feel they are special. Yeah. And then it is where you go wrong. Yeah. And so I think, but we are different. We're not special. Yeah. And so if you are different, then you can also explain why we are different and how we like to work.
And what the value is of being different.
And of course, you need to be integrating into systems and processes and approaches of the company. But still, you can be all of that without losing your identity. Yeah. And that is so important.
And I think, and that was a question from way in the beginning of the chat that was relevant, I think, from Peter Aerts on the importance of culture and building a design culture and celebrating that design culture. And sure. and having that identity. Let me move to a question by Jelle, who is actually asking this for a friend. And I happen to know Jelle very well. He's saying, you know, this must have been quite a hard journey of ups and downs. And how do you stay motivated? And let me ask again, Giulia, the view of the several people you talk to, how do people deal with the frustration and the effort required to go on that long journey?
They're not alone in the journey, so they make it a team journey.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not just the design leader, the Erik of every organization doing that by himself. But they build they cultivate a team of like-minded people that want to go for this journey, this tough journey together, and that can support each other in these moments in the difficult moments. And what we also explain in the book is that to go through this journey, it is important that as a design leader, you cultivate and keep your team motivated. You create the right environment for the entire team. So, and we have a nice collection of tips that you can use to make sure that your team stays motivated through this difficult conversation that they have. First of all, some design leaders really prepare them for that. So make sure that in their training, in mentoring young people, this idea of fighting for your ideas and being a rebel is practiced and well understood, and they practice it in a safe environment. And then they create all sort of additional activities within the design team that can compensate for those moments of challenge with working on very self-rewarding projects, for instance, giving the possibility of experiences different angles of design and different teams, different projects and different business teams, so that they might have the chance to deal with more easy contexts once in a while. So it's a lot in looking at design leadership as a team effort rather than just.
And that's interesting. So if you would scale that up to a more organizational level, you start to get in the realm of change management. And that's a question by Sarah from Frog, who actually is asking, you know, to what extent is change management and organizational change part of the skill set of a design leader? Is that something you saw in your interviews?
I start this question. I start answering, but then I want to pass it to Erik.
Okay.
Because I'm going to end to a point where Erik has a lot to say.
Okay.
Indeed, as an academic, I'm very familiar with theories of change management, and I feel that the way in which our design excellence model is organized and is a sort of designerly version of a change management process. And what we also, and change management is also about breaking down the process of having impact and changing the mindset of people into small steps. So it is about first creating awareness, then activating people acting in a different way, and then making them ambassadors. So I think this is a model that Erik created. So I don't want to, I'll let Erik explain his experience with that. But I would say the ideas of change management are underneath many of the framework that we propose, and I'm not sure whether they do it on purpose or it just happened, are very much incorporated in the ways in which design leaders operate.
Yeah, cool.
So on that point, I remember when I started in the job, I had a global meeting with the small team at that time that was at hand. And I experienced a lot of frustration, typically designer's frustration. That was among the team, and that was about, oh, we have all of these great ideas, but nobody is ever listening to us, you know, that kind of mindset. And so I got the whole team there, and this was about change management and about dealing with resistance. And I called all the team together and I said, hey guys, if you are in the business of design, you are in the business of dealing with resistance. And so the word that crosses all of this is resilience. So whether you are a designer and you're making products and you propose the products to the business and so on, or whether you are a design leader and you come up with other different organizational structures, because adding design to a company is not about putting the companies into a corner and then have a great design studio and do your job. No, it changes the way a company works, literally. I have plenty of examples of that. So to talk about that resilience and preparing young designers from the get-go on all of this, I had a great story to the team. I said, well, every time when I know my team needs to do bigger presentations, I always ask the team on forehand, are you well prepared? Do you need any help? How are things going? And that was that one time that the team came back and I asked, how did it go? And they said, it went smooth and great. And we proposed our proposal and the team loved it. And I looked at the team and I said, probably guys, you did not do a good job because you didn't stretch enough. Because if you as a designer stretch enough, there will be a lot of uncomfort in the room by the business leaders because they are making up their minds of how they are going to deal with all of these crazy ideas. And among the crazy ideas, there's also maybe ideas that are closer to home and easier to realize. So I would like you to go in next time, think more out of the box. You need to stretch more because if the team opposite to you is too comfortable, you have not done your job right. And so, I said, become part of the party here. This is what your role will be. This is, as a designer, what you will do every day. And so you need to deal with disappointment, with resistance. That is part of innovation. That is part of design. And so on an organizational level, when I had to build a team, I used a model that Giulia quickly mentioned, the 3 A's, which is very much a model where we refer to the fact that you need to create awareness first before you can do it all, and build, understanding of what designers do. And because if the environment and the key stakeholders do not understand what you do, you're going wrong, and it is not going to work. And then you create appreciation for what you do. That's what you need to do, because if people understand and they appreciate about what you do, then they can start to become ambassadors. And ambassadors are the ones, not the ones that say, I like your designs, I like your team, I like the way you're dressed, guys, because that's what you... No, this is about business leaders that understand the value of design, and they are willing to reallocate investments from their own business from one corner to another corner into design. And so that is the way I drove the progress from, and I remember when the team was frustrated about all their great ideas, I said, hey guys, maybe your ideas were not great enough, or maybe you were not able to explain them. So you need to go back to the drawing table, because we have to fight with the marketing and the science people and the logistics people who all come at the table of the CEO to ask for money for investments. And we need to just simply have a better story. And so that is the way I started to educate the team to be more prepared on building their capabilities on dealing with resistance.
You worked in the VS in the United States or in the US. Giulia, did you encounter differences in geographies? I do a lot of projects in Thailand at the moment. I know I have to change my leadership style to hit a nerve there. It's the directiveness of the Dutch simply doesn't work there. What did you encounter in terms of design leadership and geographies?
Yeah, so it's exactly what you're saying. So it's the way in which you interact in a business context is completely different. It's more a culture thing than what you would do in the Netherlands and I believe also in the States. What you also the other big geographical difference is the degree of design maturity of an average company in the Western region compared to the Asian Pacific region. There, they are starting to appreciate the value of design as a strategic partner. So that means that as a design leader, you need to do much more work in the preparatory phase, in building the foundation of design. And so the conversation will be much more aimed at creating awareness in that if we go back to this 3-step model that Erik was mentioning, rather than making the stakeholders your ambassadors, so your real partners. So I would say that the design maturity of certain countries and certain companies really is the main geographical difference that we have noticed, besides, of course, the business culture.
So there's no one flavor for all. So you have to deal with different businesses. Because you are in short cycle businesses and long cycle businesses, you are in services, they all need different design approaches. And maybe a startup and so on. Then you have the different regions, which is of course also a big thing. And so situational design leadership, like you have situational leadership, is extremely important. So you cannot, when I came from Philips to 3M, I didn't apply literally the Philips approach to 3M, because the whole situation and maturity and culture, everything was completely different. So
it's about being adaptive as a leader and adaptive to context. There's a question from Mink who also asks, isn't design leadership also influencing culture? And I find that an interesting standpoint. Huh? It's
very big deal. Very big deal.
Yeah.
I remember I was heavily involved in the company in my last role on, for instance, diversity and inclusion. Mm-hmm. And they created a whole strategy around that I didn't feel very comfortable. Mm-hmm. So I wrote a white paper that was about, with the title, Different Minds Inspire. And I shared it with the chief diversity officer of the company. And we started to work together, and the white paper I wrote was used to drive a campaign for a full year in the company, all around the world. And so you can see that design and the way we were driving design, for instance, the way I organized design as a function, as a centralized function, became the example for all other functions in the company, because the company was in a phase where the pendulum was going from more decentralized to centralized, just because they wanted to save and create efficiency through all of that, and alignment, which was missing a lot. But design was setting the scene in how to do that. And so I can give plenty of examples. When we designed the design center, everybody was so enthusiastic that I worked with the engineering team that became the blueprint for any new office that we would build around the world. And so, like I said before, adding design to a big enterprise is not about a couple of people in a corner. This is about how the company works, if you start to integrate it and strategize it on the right level.
Yeah, that's great. We're actually nearing the end of this hour already, and I feel like there's so much more to discuss. I'd like to wrap up by giving you each 1 minute on what would you like people to get out of this book? What would you like people to do differently at their jobs once they've read this book in their design jobs, on their road towards design leadership? Giulia, and really try to stick to 1 minute, because I want to send people to their well-deserved dinner.
Yeah, sure. So for me, and also based on the experience that I have in interacting with design leaders, is that you need to plan your strategy towards achieving impact. So it's not something that you can improvise. It's not something that you can reach tomorrow. You really need to take time to put down your vision on what do you want the design function to be, and also define in a very detailed manner how you are going to reach that. And of course, this will change over time, but putting the time and the effort in putting down that plan and discussing that plan with your team, but also the other stakeholders, it's something that we really help give a solid kickstart to the process of scaling design and towards, keeping that progressing. So that's my usually the main suggestion that I give to design leaders.
That's great. Thank you so much. Erik, your minute of fame.
Yeah, so my minute of fame here is, we mentioned already, every designer probably is motivated and inspired by creating value and by impacting the world. And the bigger, the better. And what I would like the book to be doing is to give confidence. So there's a confidence to designers on all levels, confidence to designers to become design leaders, and confidence to emerging design leaders to become more fearless, to do what they believe is best to do. Second thing, I would like to give them practical knowledge, because in the book there's a lot of models and practical things that create that aha moment, that things that you can use in practice immediately. And I would like to be that the designers are becoming more proud. So proud of being different. It's not not an issue of being different, but stay relevant, be meaningful, be empathetic. So sometimes I have said, if designers would use a bit more of their own empathy that they are so proud about that they have it, to create collaboration within their own organization, design would be much more successful than now. And so that are the things that I would like to give to the people and inspire them to become more fearless and just better leaders.
That's great. I love it. This was hugely inspiring, ending on this note of have a plan, as Giulia said, know your context, be adaptive, but also be bold, be fearless, and stand for your principles. I'm very inspired. The hour is over. You guys were fantastic in the chat. You guys and girls, really interesting questions. I hope I saw them all, but I must have skipped one or two. Forgive me for that. Thank you very much for attending. This recording will be, I'm looking at Joanneke now. Joanneke, this recording will be shared, and can you drop the link once more in the chat so people know where to go after this session and find the information.
Thank you, Erik, for moderating, and also the TU Delft for hosting all of this. You can't talk enough about design leadership.
Exactly, and thank you, Erik. You made it for us very easy and engaging. So
it was a joy, and it was mostly the audience asking very intelligent questions and me just reading them. So thank you everybody for attending a very inspiring session, and keep on the good work on design leadership. The book is available on bol.com and on Amazon for those people not in Holland. Order it; it's well worth it.
Yeah, and also our bookshop at the faculty. We want to have it straight away.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye. Bye.